Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is so wonderful to have you with us again.
It's good to be here.
We hope you're somewhere comfortable, maybe winding down from a long day, just ready to let the noise of the modern world fade away. In our last session, we walked through the mud and smoke of the 19th century at Waterloo. Today, we're going to travel much, much further back.
A long way back.
We're leaving the era of muskets and cannons behind and drifting all the way back to the ancient world, to a time of bronze and sunlight and the Mediterranean Sea.
And you're right, the shift in setting is, well, it's quite dramatic. The world we're entering today is quieter in some ways, technologically, but just as loud in terms of human struggle. We're trading gunpowder for heavy shields and long spears, but there's a thread that connects these stories.
There always is.
Just like Waterloo, the event we're talking about today is a real hinge point. It's one of those rare moments where the future of an entire civilization just hung in the balance.
We are talking about the Battle of Marathon. Now, I think for most people, the word marathon, it summons a very specific image.
Oh, absolutely. Running shoes, foil blankets.
Exactly. Sunday mornings, close-off city streets. It's a celebration of personal fitness, of endurance. But the sources we've gathered for this deep dive, they paint a very different picture. They tell us that this name marathon was forged not in sport, but in a desperate, terrifying fight for survival.
And that is the fascinating disconnect, isn't it? The thing we need to explore. We associate the word with, a runner's high, a personal best. But the origin is just rooted in extreme violence. It's the story of a clash between two civilizations that were, they were complete aliens to one another.
So that's our mission for this deep dive.
It is, to gently unravel that link. We want to understand how we got from a blood-soaked beach in the year 490 BC to a finish line in a modern city.
So let's set the scene. We need to go back roughly 2,500 years. We're looking at the year 490 DC.
Right.
And the map of the world looks very different.
It really does. To understand the stakes here, you have to look at the two sides. On one side, you have the Greeks. But it's so important to remember that Greece wasn't a single unified country. Not like we think of nations today.
It wasn't one color on a map.
No, not at all. It was a collection of scattered city-states. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes. They shared a language, they worshipped the same gods, but they were politically independent. And in fact, they often fought with each other.
Like squabbling neighbors.
Exactly. They were fragmented. And then you look to the east and you see something totally different. You see the Persian Empire.
And the contrast is huge.
It couldn't be greater.
Yeah.
Under King Darius I, the Persian Empire was the largest, the wealthiest, the most powerful force the world had ever seen.
When we say large, what are we talking about here?
It was immense. I mean, if you were to trace it on a map today, its territory stretched all the way from modern-day India and Iran, right across the Middle East, down into Egypt. It was even bleeding into parts of Europe.
Just a colossal superpower.
It really was. An administrative machine that could pull soldiers and resources from dozens of different cultures.
So you have this sprawling empire on one side and these small, bickering Greek city-states on the other. It feels like a mismatch from the very start. What caused the friction? Why did the Persians turn their attention to Greece?
Well, it came from a desire for expansion, of course, but also from a very specific desire for punishment. King Darius was looking to expand his borders, as emperors do. But a few years earlier, some Greek city-states had supported a rebellion against Persian rule. There were Greek settlements on the coast of what is now Turkey-Persian territory, and Athens sent ships to help them rebel. They even helped burn a Persian city.
And Darius would have taken that personally.
Oh, very personally. He was furious. There's a story that he had a servant stand by him every night at dinner, and before the king could eat, the servant had to whisper to him, "Master, remember the Athenians."
Wow. That's chilling. So it wasn't just geopolitics, it was a grudge.
Precisely. He wanted to punish them, but beyond that, he wanted to conquer the region completely. So in 490 BC, he launched an invasion. The Persians loaded hundreds of ships, some sources say 600, with thousands of soldiers and horses, and they sailed across the Aegean.
I can't imagine a more terrifying sight. Just hundreds of ships filling the horizon.
It would have felt like the end of the world. And they didn't land just anywhere. They chose a specific spot on the east coast of Greece, a plain known as Marathon.
And that location wasn't an accident, was it?
No, not at all. It was very calculated. Marathon is about 26 miles from Athens, but the key thing is it's a flat plain.
Perfect for cavalry.
Exactly. The Persians brought their greatest tactical advantage with them, their cavalry. Horses need that open ground. So the plan was simple. Land on the beach, draw the Athenian army out, and destroy them on the plain. Then march on Athens unopposed.
So Athens is in a total panic. They see the fleet land. They know this army is gathering. It really is a David and Goliath situation.
That's a very good way to put it. The mismatch was severe. If we look at the numbers, historians estimate the Persians brought between 25,000 and 30,000 infantry, and that's not even counting the cavalry.
And the Greeks, what could Athens pull together?
Athens scrambled every able-bodied man they could find. They managed to gather about 9,000 to 10,000 troops.
So right from the start, they're outnumbered roughly 3-1.
At least.
And this is where that fragmentation of the city-states becomes so clear. Athens asked for help, didn't they?
They did. They sent a runner, a professional courier, to Sparta. Sparta had the best soldiers in the world. Athens pleaded for assistance, but the Spartans refused. Or rather, they said they couldn't come yet.
Because of a festival.
Yes, a religious festival called the Carnea. Their laws strictly forbade them from marching to war until the full moon. So effectively, they told Athens, you have to wait a week.
Oh, that sinking feeling. Imagine hearing that. The enemy is on your shores, and the best warriors in the world are busy with the ceremony.
It must have felt like a suicide mission, but they weren't entirely alone. There's a really touching footnote to this story. The small city-state of Plataea, a loyal ally, sent every single soldier they had.
How many was that?
About 1,000 men.
It doesn't change the math by much.
No, not really. They were still vastly outnumbered. But morally, it meant everything.
Right.
To see those 1,000 shields arrive, it reminded the Athenians they weren't completely abandoned.
So the armies gather on the plain, Persians near the beach, Greeks in the foothills blocking the road to Athens. And they just stare at each other for days. I want to talk about how they fought, because even though the Greeks were outnumbered, they had a very different way of waging war.
They did. And this difference is crucial to understanding what happened. The two armies were like oil and water. The Persians relied on speed, mobility, numbers. Their soldiers wore very light armor, often just quilted cloth. They carried wicker shields. The whole strategy was to overwhelm you with arrows from a distance, then use cavalry to chase down the survivors.
And
the Greeks were heavy. They fought as hoplites. These were soldiers in heavy bronze armor, bronze helmets, bronze breastplates, greaves on their legs. But their most important piece of gear was the shield.
The hoplon.
Yes, a massive, heavy, round shield made of wood, covered in bronze, weighed nearly 20 pounds. And the key is, they didn't fight as individuals. They fought in a formation called a phalanx.
Can you describe what that looked like?
Imagine a solid wall of men, shoulder to shoulder, several ranks deep. Their shield overlaps, so my shield covers my left side, but it also covers your right.
A continuous armored barrier.
Exactly. And bristling out from this wall of shields were rows of long spears.
It sounds like a human tank.
That's a good way to think about it. It was incredibly difficult to break from the front. And very importantly, it was effective against cavalry. Horses. Well, they're smart animals. They will not charge into a solid wall of sharp spikes.
So the Greeks had the armor, the formation.
Yeah.
But the Persians had those archers. And this brings us to the day of the battle. The Greeks are looking down at this huge force, and they have a very serious problem. If they just stand there, the Persian archers will just wipe them out from a distance.
Precisely. They were in what we might call the kill zone. The effective range of a Persian bow was about 200 yards. If the Greeks marched slowly, which a phalanx usually did, they'd be under fire for a long, long time, picked apart before they could even fight.
The Greek general, Miltiades, he knew this. He had to close that gap and fast. So he made a decision that, well, it must have seemed like absolute madness.
He ordered the heavy infantry to run.
In full bronze armor.
Yes, Miltiades ordered a full charge. We're talking about men carrying 70 pounds of gear in the Greek summer heat, sprinting toward the enemy line. The distance was about a mile, but that last 200 yards, that kill zone, was a dead sprint.
That is just an incredible physical feat, running into a storm of arrows.
It was desperate, but it was brilliant. The Persians were completely shocked. The sources say they thought the Greeks had lost their minds. They'd never seen an army charge like that without horse support.
They thought it was a suicide gesture.
Yes. But the speed was the key. By running, they minimized the time they were exposed to the arrows. The archers just didn't have enough time to fire as many volleys as they planned. And then the impact. You have to imagine the sound. This heavy metal wall of the phalanx crashing into the lighter, wicker-shielded Persian lines at full speed.
The physics were all on the Greek side at that point.
Exactly. The force of it just shattered the front of the Persian formation. Now, it wasn't easy. The center of the Greek line actually struggled. It was pushed back. But Miltiades had strengthened the wings, the sides of his army.
So while the center was bending, the sides were winning.
Yes. The Greek wings crushed the Persian flanks and then swung inward like a pincer. They enveloped the Persian center. And the Persian soldiers, realizing they were being surrounded and that their arrows hadn't worked, they panicked. They broke rank and fled back to their ships.
So against all odds, the smaller army broke them. They chased them into the surf, capturing ships. It sounds like a complete victory. But this wasn't the end of the danger, was it?
No.
There's a mystery here.
That's right. Throughout this fight on the beach, something was missing. The Persian cavalry.
Where were they?
The prevailing theory is that the Persians had tried a trick. Just as the battle started, or maybe right before, the cavalry had boarded the ships. Their plan was to sail around the coast. While the Greek army was busy at Marathon, the Persian fleet would sail directly to Athens.
Oh, I see. It was a double threat. Leave the Greek army stranded and attack the undefended city.
Exactly, a checkmate move. If the Persian fleet reached Athens before the army could get back, the city would fall. The victory on the beach would mean nothing.
So the Greek soldiers, who have just sprinted into battle, fought hand-to-hand for their lives. They couldn't rest.
No rest at all. This is the second race of the day, and maybe the more important one. The exhausted Greek army had to regroup immediately and march back to Athens, all 26 miles, as fast as they could.
It's unimaginable, that exhaustion, marching in that heat, in armor, after the trauma of combat.
But they did it. They marched with everything they had left, and they arrived in Athens just in time. When the Persian fleet pulled into the harbor near Athens, expecting an easy conquest, they looked up at the walls.
And what did they see?
They saw the very same soldiers they had just fought at Marathon. The Greeks were standing there, shields ready, waiting for them.
That must have been a completely demoralizing sight.
Completely. The element of surprise was gone. The Persians realized they couldn't take the city. They weren't going to fight those men again. They turned their ships around and just sailed away.
Such a close call. An hour later, and history is different. Let's talk about the cost of this. What were the casualties like?
The contrast is staggering. Herodotus tells us the Greeks lost fewer than 210 men. Specifically, 192 Athenians and 11 Plataeans. We actually know this because they were buried in a mound on the battlefield that you can still visit.
And the Persians.
They lost over 6,000 men, a crushing defeat for the empire.
And now we have to connect this to the reason most of us know that word. We have the battle, the march of the army. But there is a legend of a single runner.
Yes, the legend of Pheidippides. This is the story that gave birth to the modern race. Now, we have to be gentle with the sources here. There are a few versions, but the most famous one says that after the victory was secured, a young soldier named Pheidippides was chosen to run the news from the battlefield to Athens.
He wasn't marching with the army, he was running ahead.
Correct, running solo to let the city know they were safe so they wouldn't surrender. The distance was about 42 kilometers, roughly 26 miles, and you have to remember, he had just fought in the battle.
So he runs this incredible distance alone, pushing his body past its limits. What happens when he arrives?
The legend says he burst into the city square. He was completely exhausted, his heart beating out of his chest. He shouted one word, Niki.
Which means?
Victory. And immediately after delivering the message, he collapsed and died from exhaustion.
It's a tragic but beautiful moment, the ultimate sacrifice to deliver good news.
It is. And that run, that solitary struggle of Pheidippides, is what inspired the modern marathon. When the modern Olympics began in 1896, the organizers wanted an event that honored ancient Greece. So they created a race based on the distance from Marathon to Athens.
And that's why we run 26 miles today.
Roughly, yes. The distance was standardized a bit later, but the spirit of it is a direct tribute to Pheidippides and his run.
It really changes how you look at the sport. It isn't just about fitness, it's a memorial. Every person pinning on a bib number is reenacting a messenger bringing news of survival.
It transforms it, doesn't it? From a physical test into a historical ritual. You're running in the footsteps of a ghost.
But stepping back, why does this one battle matter so much? Why is it seen as such a turning point?
It's often called a classic butterfly effect moment. If the Persians had won at Marathon, they would have likely conquered all of Greece.
And if Greece had fallen?
Well, The distinct culture that was developing there might have been extinguished. You have to remember what was happening in Athens. They were just beginning to experiment with a radical new idea called democracy. They were laying the foundations for philosophy, for theater, for the kind of logic and science that, well, that underpins the Western world.
And the Persian Empire was a monarchy.
A centralized autocracy. If the Persians had won, Athens would have become just another provincial capital. That spark, it likely would have been snuffed out. No Parthenon, no Socrates, no Plato. The entire trajectory of Western thought would have been rewritten.
So in a way, that phalanx of shields, it preserved the future.
That's the argument many historians make. It proved that a free society fighting for its home could stand against the might of a massive empire. It gave the Greeks this newfound confidence, which led to the golden age of Athens.
But the story didn't end there, did it?
No, it didn't. King Darius was humiliated. He spent years planning a second, even larger invasion. But he died before he could launch it.
And the grudge passed down to his son.
It did, to his son Xerxes. And 10 years later, Xerxes would return with an army that made the first one look like a scouting party. And that sets the stage for other famous stories, like the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae.
But that is a deep dive for another night.
Indeed. The next chapter in this long struggle.
It's amazing to think how one morning on a beach and one desperate sprint defined so much, that a morning of violence 2,500 years ago is why people wake up on Sundays to run 26 miles.
It is a single battle and a single runner. It's a reminder that history isn't just about maps and dates. It's about human endurance. The endurance of those soldiers in the bronze armor, the endurance of the runner, and the endurance of the ideas they fought for.
So the next time you see a marathon, or maybe even run one yourself, think about the history beneath your feet. Think about the armor, the shields, and the messenger who ran to say victory.
It certainly adds a lot more weight to every step.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the past. We'll leave you here with the quiet echoes of that ancient plain and the waves of the Aegean Sea.
Thank you for listening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.